Give me one second. All right, our YouTube is up and running. We're live and ready to go. All right.
Okay. It is now 10:01 a.m. and I'm calling to order the meeting of the Board of Directors of Friday, October 28th, 2022. Before we begin, please note this meeting is live streamed on YouTube, which the discussion was just about, and recorded, which we also discussed. Members of the public are encouraged to watch and listen to the meeting on YouTube or by dialing into 415-569-6446 for the audio of this meeting. And remember that number. I'll repeat it again in about public comments. So if you have a pencil and paper need to write it down, please do. If you would like to provide public comment at today's meeting and have not done so already, please call again 415-569-6446 and let the facilitator know you would like to provide public comment. I appreciate everyone's patience as we move through today's meeting. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Thank you, and good morning again, everyone. Starting with Director Arnold.
Here.
Thank you. Director Conroy. Is absent. Director Garbarino.
Here.
Director Giudice.
Here.
Director Grosball.
Here.
Director Hernandez. Is absent. Director Maston.
Here.
Director Parr.
Present.
Director Rabbit.
Here.
Director Rodoni.
Present.
Director Snyder.
Here.
Director Stephanie.
Here.
Thank you. Director Thier.
Here.
Second Vice President Hill.
Here.
First Vice President Cochran.
Here.
And President Tirio.
I'm here.
Thank you. You have 14 and you have a quorum.
Thank you.
I'm going to confirm staff really quickly.
Yeah,
Dennis
please.
Mulligan.
Here.
Joe Wire.
Yes.
Ava Barr-Furbush.
Present.
Thank you. Kim Manolius.
Good morning.
Madeline Chun as well.
Yes.
Dave Rivera.
Good morning, Present.
Mona Babauta. Jim Swindler.
Present.
And Kelly Hopper.
Good morning.
Thank you. That confirms everyone on the line.
Thank you, Madam Secretary, and thanks everyone for being with us today. And we will ask for your continued patience as we go through today's board agenda. I will remind everyone among my colleagues to please mute your microphones and remember to unmute them when we open up for directors' discussion. If we have directors calling in by phone, which I don't think we do, Madam Secretary, please use your mute button or *6 to unmute yourself. I'll ask for any questions or comments on items on the agenda. Click on the raise hand function on your device if you have a question, or press *9 for the raise hand function if joining by phone. If there are any questions, the secretary or I will call on you accordingly. If we missed your raised hand, please pipe up. Following any discussion, we'll take the appropriate roll call vote. If you are not speaking, please again remember to mute your phones to minimize the background noise on today's meeting. Please follow along by referring to the page numbers located on the bottom right-hand corner of your meeting packet. Director Cochran, please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes, I will. Hammerette, are you raising the flag on the? Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. So before we move on to public comment, Madam Secretary, we were at 7 commenters lined up. What are we looking at now?
We're at 5. However, we would like to probably poll one last time because since we've been just getting started, a number of others have joined the call. So we do want to give them a chance as well. So we do have 5 at this moment.
Sorry, I misremembered. I said 7.
Okay, so if that's okay, then we're going to move along into agenda item number 4 for public comment on any and all items on today's agenda. And if you want to speak to an item on our agenda, please speak to it now. Justine, I'm going to turn it over to you so you can facilitate and introduce our first speaker. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning. Our first speaker this morning is Kimberly Renee Gamboa.
Good morning. My name is Kimberly Renee Gamboa, and I am holding one of my favorite photos of my 18-year-old son, Kyle Emerson Gamboa, smiling from ear to ear in his high school class picture. Kyle jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge on September 20th, 2013 at 11:45 a.m. One of Kyle's best friends from Detroit came out to California this week, and the first place he went was to the Golden Gate Bridge at Light Pole 77 where Kyle had jumped. It warms my heart, his, and all of Kyle's family and friends that the suicide deterrent is being installed and that we can look over the bridge at Light Pole 77 and actually see the net. I am still overwhelmed and want to thank you so much for all of your hard work and efforts in the construction of the suicide deterrent. This is truly one of the greatest achievements to prevent suicides, actually save lives at the Golden Gate Bridge. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gamboa. We have the next speaker, please, Ms. Bach.
Certainly. Our next speaker is Dave Rohde. Dave, go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Dave Rohde. I'm a San Francisco climate reality leader working with Al Gore's Climate Reality Project. Every time I delve into an issue here at the Golden Gate Bridge District, I find a wealth of resources. Your website is set up well, and now with your YouTube channel, it's even easier to catch up on district meetings. All much appreciated. And thank you, Mr. Mulligan, for inviting me to check out the Building and Operating Committee. I found the September 22nd meeting to be very interesting. I watched and rewatched the presentation by Michael Hoffman, the Director of Engineering and Maintenance at the Ferry Division. As you recall, Mr. Hoffman was seeking approval for a $3.5 million expense for new engines for the MS San Francisco and the MS Marin. I understand that these engines are M2 engines with a Tier 4 EPA reading that CARB recently required. It's good to know that these engines will result in a significant reduction of particulate matter emissions and of nitrous oxide, which is a greenhouse gas. Not mentioned in Mr. Hoffman's presentation, I assume these engines will burn renewable diesel. Life cycle analysis of this biofuel shows that these efficient engines will result, unfortunately, in very little CO2 reduction. It was interesting to hear that the Bridge District had already received a Carl Moyer grant of $1.4 million to help pay for the new engines, but it was quite curious to note that this money could not be spent on any other kind of engine. As a side note, at the end of this presentation, Mr. Hoffman gave brief reasons why neither hybrid or electric engines could be used. Apparently, the hybrid engines have too much extra weight, too much added drag, resulting in poor fuel efficiency. But the principal reason given for not being able to use electric engines was that there were no charging stations in place at any of the docks. After Director Hill asked if these engines had a required lifespan, like the 12-year minimum use put on buses, Mr. Mulligan clarified that they do not, saying that if electric engines were required, with the required speed capabilities were available in a few years, these new diesel engines can be replaced with electric. What stood out most in Mr. Hoffman's detailed presentation and the committee discussion that followed was not what was said, but what was not said. Though Mr. Hoffman said staff would look at plans for charging stations, no further details were provided. There was no discussion about a timeline for developing, financing, and installing the infrastructure needed for electric ferries, which means that when electric ferries are fast enough, and I've argued before that they already are, you will still have an excuse of not having charging stations at the ferry terminals. So I ask in all sincerity, Mr. Mulligan and board members, what is your timeline for installing electric charging stations at the ferry terminals? And in light of your climate emergency resolution, is it a priority? Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Rohde. Ms. Bach, the next speaker, please.
Thank you. Our next speaker is David Pilpel. David, go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we're good. Thank you.
Great. David Pilpel, good morning. So I refer to my comments from yesterday. I hope that they were considered to be overly harsh, but I was feeling a certain way yesterday morning. I did submit a completed application form in the afternoon with the attached letter that I had previously sent. Hopefully that will resolve things there. Staff can contact me if there's anything further that's needed. I also want to refer to my comments that I believe I made during the OPEB meeting about PFM and the good work that they do both for the OPEB board and for the district. And I stand by those comments as well. Finally, on the minutes, I wanted to take a moment to appreciate the district secretary and her small but mighty staff. A while back, minutes were behind. They are no longer behind. Minutes are timely and accurate. And although I have not met Thomas in person, I believe that he's doing a fine job, and I'm keeping an open mind about Dean, and just wanted to say thank you for keeping the minutes timely and accurate. Great work there. Thanks for listening.
And thank you, Mr. Pilpel. Ms. Bach, the next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Shane Weinstein. Shane, go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Excellent. Good morning, Chair Terrio and his fellow board directors. Shane Weinstein, president of ATU 1575. I represent all the active and retired bus operators at Golden Gate. I didn't have intention of calling in this morning until I received multiple calls from my African-American brothers and sisters of ATU 1575. Just overnight, there was a picture posted in the driver's room of a monkey covering his eyes with the caption, "Don't look the other way, report all hazards and stay safe." First of all, how did this pass the thought stage, let alone the printing stage and then the posting stage? This is an absolute gross misjudgment on the part of whomever district employees had a hand in thought, creation, and posting of this sign. African Americans and minorities in this country have been, for centuries have been treated like second-class citizens. This shouldn't be happening at Golden Gate Transit in 2022, let alone ever. The district continues to deny recognizing Juneteenth as a national holiday like many other Bay Area agencies have already. Remember, they were trying to make all district employees give up a floating holiday in exchange for Juneteenth. What kind of messages is sending to our marginalized groups at Golden Gate Transit who make up the majority of our operator workforce? What kind of message does a monkey have to, what does a monkey have to do with safety? How about a cartoon of an inclusive group with procedure on how to file a safety issue? It's time to properly recognize the effort of our African-American brothers and sisters and the minorities within our ranks and the true value that they bring to Golden Gate every single day, not posting unnecessary, unconscionable photos that many of my members felt was racist and completely terrible. This can't happen again. Procedure must be in place today so this is not only never thought of, it's never printed, and certainly never posted on Golden Gate Transit property ever again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weinstein. Ms. Bach, who's our next speaker?
Our next speaker is Warren Wells. Warren, go ahead.
Thank you, President Terrio, members of the board. This is Warren Wells, Policy and Planning Director for the Marin County Bicycle Coalition. As you know, we're very focused on improving safety and access for people walking and biking on the bridge and on Alexander Avenue, as it is the only way to travel between Marin and San Francisco outside of a motor vehicle. I do want to bring to the attention of the board that last week was the first meeting of the new Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee for the Golden Gate Bridge District. This committee was authorized by the board as part of the bicycle safety study last year and mirrors the existing committees for bus passengers, ferry passengers, and accessibility. We had a great turnout of interested bicycle riders from both sides of the bridge who regularly cross for commutes, recreation, and general transportation. It's my hope and belief that this group can work with staff to fix some of the many small issues that bedevil riders in the near term, and then help develop plans for some of the larger, more capital-intensive issues going forward. And I do want to express my sincere gratitude to Bridge District staff for the hard work in standing up this committee, and to President Terrio and Director Hill for their attendance and excellent feedback during that initial PBAC meeting. So looking forward to working with you all going forward, and many thanks here. Take care.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. I believe Director Maston was in attendance as well. Were you not, Director Maston? Ms. Bach, the next speaker, please.
President Serio, we've come to the end of our list, and I would like to poll the room. If you can just give me a minute, if that is okay with you.
Yes, please. That's fine.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. President Serio, we have reached the end of our speaker list.
Thank you very much, then, Ms. Bach. Madam Secretary, let's move along to the next item on the agenda. Thanks once again to everybody for their comments here. Give me a second here.
Okay, just to add to that, I know David Pilpa had mentioned thanking my staff, but at the helm of that for our minutes, I want to also add that Elizabeth Eels has been instrumental in helping us keep on top of it. So I wanted to mention her name as well. So I'm going to move on to item number 5, and that's to approve the calendar.
I got a bit ahead of myself here.
Oh,
I see the general manager raising his finger.
Yeah.
and I'm sure actually that he has some things to say with regard to public comment. General Manager Mulligan.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board, members of the public and staff. I wish to respond to the 5 people that took the time out to speak with us today, and I want to thank them for their comments. Ms. Kimberly Renee Gamboa has been a tireless advocate. I want to acknowledge and thank your advocacy once again. We're thrilled that the contractor is installing the net on the bridge. Ms. Bauer can do a more detailed update, but there's almost a mile of netting up on the bridge, and we're pleased that it's at light pole 77. With respect to Mr. David Rohde, I echo his comments on the minutes as well as Mr. Pilpel's. We did take an item to the board in September. We said we'd be coming back at a future BNO meeting to talk about the state of the art for electric ferries. This month's meetings yesterday were quite busy, so we have that scheduled for next month at BNO, and it'll be the same staff that presented the item. I should highlight that the engines that were approved were funded by state grants from the Air Board. So the Air Resources Board, CARB, is providing the funding for those engines because they move the needle and clean things. With respect to charging infrastructure, there are 27 transit agencies in the Bay Area. It would be silly if all 27 went out and did their own contracts to install separate individual charging. And in all likelihood, it may create inoperability challenges with respect to emergency response. A WIDA boat or a Golden Gate boat should be able to charge at each other's facilities, just like our buses should be able to charge at Sonoma County Transit or Muni facilities. And so Golden Gate is working with MTC, and MTC has sent out a request for proposals to hire a firm to assist the region in doing a regional look at the charging infrastructure needed. And at the district's urging and WIDA's urging, that effort's not just focused on buses, but it's buses and ferries. And so there is a regional effort underway to make sure that not just one agency, but all 27 agencies do stuff. So our buses and boats can plug into each other's facilities, particularly important if there's a disaster in the Bay Area where we have to issue mutual aid. So that effort is ongoing, and I can update the board on that periodically to let you know what it is. But right now, the first step is to hire a firm to take all the efforts that various agencies have done on buses and ferries to consolidate those and look at ways that we can creatively and using public money most wisely collectively apply for grants and then collectively implement projects. The Bay Area will be much more competitive in applying for federal grants if we apply together with multiple agencies as opposed to 27 agencies each submitting their own application. So that is the current game plan for the Bay Area for that. For Mr. Pilpel, I want to thank Mr. Pilpel because yesterday after the board meeting, he did submit an application to join the District Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. So he will be notified in advance of our next meeting and welcomed to that group. But with respect to Mr. Shane Weinstein, he is correct. An inappropriate poster was posted at our bus facility. When it was brought to the attention of bus management, all the posters were immediately taken down. The poster was downloaded from a subscription service that provides safety posters and safety bulletins, and it should never have been posted. And change was implemented today, and I know the change has been shared with Mr. Weinstein that going forward, No posters will be posted unless they go through the safety committee, which includes bus management as well as bus operators, to ensure there's never a repeat of what happened this morning. And so that change was made today, and it was shared with Mr. Weinstein before this meeting. But I appreciate him highlighting that we had an unfortunate event so that the board is aware of it. I was going to bring it up under my remarks. It was unfortunate, it was inappropriate, and steps have been taken to make sure that it never happens again. The Bridge District recognizes all our employees. We are a majority minority employer. The majority of our employees are members of minority groups. So clearly we want to acknowledge and make all of our employees feel comfortable here, and it should not have happened. With respect to Mr. Warren Wells, I'd like to thank him for being willing to serve as the vice chair of the new Bike Pedestrian Advisory Committee. And the district looks forward to working with him and all the other members of the Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee as we outline and roll out a new process where we have an advisory committee that can shape input into the board process. And certainly the first order of work is to review Alexander Avenue. That concludes my response to the public comment. I'm available for any questions that you might have.
Thank you, General Manager Mulligan. Sorry for having zipped past you almost earlier. I see there are hands up for questions, and I saw Director Grossball's hand up first. Director Grossball.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dennis, you know, you mentioned the other 27, the various 27 transit agencies. It sounds like maybe none of them have started getting the charging stations. Are any of the other agencies ahead of us on that, or are they all waiting for this MTC proposal?
People are in different spots based on the replacement cycle for their buses. On the bus side, on the water side, WIDA and Golden Gate are in the same place. On the bus side, some folks have more electric buses than others. We currently have 2 electric buses that charge at our San Rafael bus facility. They're owned by Marin Transit, and they're buses that we operate for them. A couple of the agencies have a little bit more infrastructure, but it's quite troubling that some plug in the left side of the bus, some plug in the right side of the bus. We have agencies looking at overhead inductive charging for ZAP charging. We have other agencies looking at in-ground inductive charging. And so it is kind of scattered, and before it gets too much further down the road, it's vital that the region come together because we know firsthand from the fires that occurred in Santa Rosa that mutual aid is real. We know that when there was a horrific shooting in a VTA bus yard, we sent buses and operators down there. And so it's important that we be able to work collaboratively, and so those efforts are underway. But in terms of buses, we only have 2 electric buses that are currently operated by us, and they're owned by Marin Transit.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Thier.
Thank you so much. I know that we don't normally respond to any public comment, but I just did want to make one comment. I also, I had not heard about the safety poster until Mr. Weinstein just brought it up at public comment. But I do want to commend the district for getting that poster taken down right away. And I also want to express my apology. Even though I didn't know about it, I do want to express an apology to all of our African-American employees and other minorities and to all employees, because I know that any disrespect was not intended, but I know how much these things can be hurtful. And I do hope that in working with the district we will be able to have some healing that will take place in the future through our various committees. And, if there's anything I can do to help, I'm committed to that. And I just wanted to express that apology as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Thier. Any other directors with questions for the General Manager on his remarks? I think actually I should have pushed those off to his report later on, but I'll give the opportunity anyway for anyone else who has a question now to ask it. Not seeing any, then Madam Secretary, now let's move on to the next item.
Thank you. We're going to move on to item number 5, and that's to approve the consent calendar, including approval of minutes from the committee and board meetings in August, as well as ratification of previous actions by the Auditor Controller. And I'm sorry, I meant September. And that consent calendar is located on pages 5 to 27 in your packet, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Are there any board members with questions, comments, corrections on the consent calendar? Then seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move the item.
There's a motion
Second it.
and there's a second. Madam Secretary, that means we take a roll call vote.
Thank you. We have a first and second on the consent calendar, and I'm going to start with Director Arnold.
Aye.
Director Conroy,
Aye.
Director Garbarino,
Aye.
Director Giudice,
Yes.
Director Grosball,
Yes.
Director Hernandez is absent, Director Meston,
Aye.
Director Parr,
Aye.
Director Rabbit,
Aye.
Director Rodoni,
Aye.
thank you, Director Snyder,
Aye.
Director Stephanie,
Aye.
Director Thier,
Aye.
Second Vice President Hill,
Yes.
First Vice President Cochran,
Yes.
and President Terrio.
Yes,
Thank you. You have 15 ayes.
15 zip, the item passes. Madam Secretary, the next item, please.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the report of the general manager, and that staff report can be found on pages 29 to 40 of your packet, and Dennis Mulligan is back on to present his report. Dennis, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Secretary, members of the board, members of the public and staff. My written report is before you. I do wish to highlight a couple items. I'll start with the impacts of the COVID pandemic on our operations. Because the world has changed as we come out of the pandemic, and we're still going through a transitory period. But where we are today, 25% of all office space in downtown San Francisco is unleased. Stated another way, 1 out of every 4 floors of office buildings in downtown San Francisco is sitting vacant without a tenant occupying the space. While those are percentages in real terms or actual space, the amount of vacant office space in downtown San Francisco is equal to 20 Salesforce towers. 20 Salesforce towers is equivalent to about 27 million square feet of office space that is sitting vacant in downtown San Francisco. So I think it's important to be aware of that and to recognize it'll likely take some time for downtown San Francisco to recover. And the Bridge District's bus, ferry, and bridge traffic during the commute period is tied to that recovery. So we are joined at the hip with the success of downtown San Francisco. And I'll make it real for us. During the week of October 9th, overall bridge traffic was down about 16% when compared to the same week pre-pandemic. However, during the morning commute period, which is 5 a.m. to 9 a.m., bridge traffic was down 30%. So travel's come back in the Golden Gate corridor between the North Bay and San Francisco, but even via automobile, it's not travel tied to commuting into an office in downtown San Francisco. Now, on our bus side, we operate 2 types of bus service. We have regional bus service that operates about 23 hours a day up and down the 101 corridor between Santa Rosa and San Francisco and across the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge, connecting the Del Norte BART station in Contra Costa County to the San Rafael Transit Center. So those routes are the 130, the 150, and 101 on Highway 101, and the Route 580 in the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge corridor. And before the pandemic, that was about half of our hours of bus service. The other half was commute bus service, and that provides express bus service with only a couple stops, and then it goes nonstop to the financial district. An example of that's the old Route 4, now called the Route 114 from Mill Valley to the financial district, or the Route 172, formerly the Route 72 from Santa Rosa. And I highlight the distinction in those 2 types of bus service because it mirrors what's happening in downtown San Francisco. During the week of October 9th, overall ridership was down on our buses about 58%. So we only carried 42% of our normal bus ridership. However, the regional service and the commute services are radically different. Our regional buses that operate about 23 hours a day, 80% of our customers were back. We were only down about 20%. Our commute service is the polar opposite of that. Our commute bus service, we only carried about 20% of our customers pre-pandemic, and we're down 80%. Ferry is similar. Ferry ridership that same week was down about 52% compared to the same week pre-pandemic. So we carried 48%, or about half of our normal ferry ridership. The riders that are missing are the commuters, principally out of Larkspur. Pre-pandemic, we had 42 trips a day between Larkspur and San Francisco on weekdays. We added 2 trips back earlier this month. That brings us up to 24 trips, and that's more than enough. So we're seeing a very, very slow return. It's important to notice and to recognize that as we move forward. We will continue to add transit service back as customers return incrementally so that we make our one-time federal COVID relief money last as long as possible. But the rebirth of San Francisco downtown will take some time, and we're fortunate that we have a lot of federal money. Our revenues are down because customers are down. The week of October 9th, revenues from tolls and transit fares were down almost $1 million. They're down $960,000 compared to the same week pre-pandemic. So that's just a snapshot of what's happening. So things are coming back, but the commute is coming back much slower than everything else. Moving on to another topic, it came up at the GAPI meeting that one of the bills that passed was Assembly Bill 2594 that was authored by Assemblymember Ting from San Francisco. The Bridge District and MTC both worked with Assemblymember Ting on the bill. He reached out to the district and included the Bridge District in his press announcement when the governor signed the bill. So he was clearly very appreciative of our efforts working with him. But in the coming months, we will have a couple items coming forward to the board. We'll have to make some changes to comply with some of the things in the bill. For instance, we've been giving customers for the last almost 10 years 21 days to pay their bill, like your cable bill and your PG&E bill. The bill says we should expand that to 30 days. So we're working with Metropolitan Transportation Commission, acting as a Bay Area Toll Authority, to bring some items forward to you in the coming months to comply with that. But we're real pleased that the bill passed. And like I said, the author reached out to us to share in the announcement of it. Moving on to recognitions, I do want to recognize some key personnel that were involved in a critical incident where they implemented resuscitation efforts to help an individual who had stopped breathing. And so I want to thank all the staff that was involved. If this individual had collapsed sooner before workers showed up, they would not have survived. But fortunately, it was after our laborers were on site. And so I want to thank laborer Daryl Shinnett, laborer Ignacio Mendez, laborer Eduardo Gudino, and chief laborer Willis Whitfield, along with patrol officer Fabian Benjamin, patrol officer Kevin Horn, Sergeant Gabriel Jaquez. And I want to thank them along with patrol officers Miguel Torres and roadway services technician Mike Tupas, and recognize them for their professionalism, tact, and teamwork. They jumped in, these employees, and they started CPR, mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. They deployed AEDs, and they kept the person going until emergency responders could arrive at the site. So that person is alive today, and we're very appreciative of their efforts. And so I think it's important to recognize them. I'd be remiss if I also didn't mention the person behind the scenes that did the dispatching when it was radioed in, and that's Sergeant Steve Fry. And I'm sad to announce, good for him, sad for us, that Steve Fry's last day with the district is today. But he was the person that did the dispatch. He's retiring after over 31 years of service with us, and I'll mention him next month when I walk through the retirements. Speaking of retirements, I want to announce that Chief of Roadway Services Technician Bill San Gregorio retired on October 3rd after 28 years and 4 months of service with the district. He joined us originally as a temporary lane worker, placing the yellow plastic tubes in the bridge, and he was promoted to a part-time lane worker, then to bridge service operator, and then promoted to be bridge service supervisor, responsible for the staff that operates the zipper trucks and all the tow service that helps stranded motorists in the vicinity of the bridge. So I want to thank him for his years of service with the district. He wasn't selected as Employee of the Month back in August of 2014, and also Employee of the Year in 2014. So he's responded to countless instances where he's helped stranded motorists, and I just want to thank him and wish him a long and healthy retirement. It's also my privilege to announce that bus operator David Cordova retired on October 1st after 22 years, 7 months, and 16 days of service with the district. He joined us on February 14th, Valentine's Day in 2000. We wish him a long and happy retirement. I also have a presentation for years of service. I want to thank and recognize bus mechanic apprentice Thomas Ung, who celebrated 20 years of service with the district on October 21st. He was previously selected as Employee of the Month in 2017. Of note, he joined the district as a stock clerk in our gift shop when we used to run a small gift shop here at the bridge. When we closed those operations, he was given the opportunity for other opportunities in the district, and he became a bus servicer, and he's moved up to the ranks, and he's now a bus mechanic apprentice. And so I just want to thank him for his 20 years of service, and hopefully we'll get 20 years more out of him because he's a phenomenal employee. And finally, the Employee of the Month. The Employee of the Month Committee, which is a committee of employees, not managers, selected for the Employee of the Month 2 people, dispatcher Kristen Johnson and Transportation Field Supervisor Gary Parsigian in the bus division for October 2022. They're recognized for their impeccable and professional handling of getting bus service out and responding to customer needs on a particularly challenging day that was about a year ago. On October 24th, 2021, there's torrential rain, flooding, and closures across the Bay Area, including in the North Bay. They coordinated efforts with calm expertise and a level-headed approach to a very, very stressful, fast-paced day. So I want to thank them and acknowledge them for their efforts. Ms. Johnson joined us as a bus operator in June 17th, 2019. She was promoted to a dispatcher 2 trainee June 8th, 2020, into her current position on November 16th, 2020. So she's rising rapidly through the ranks. Prior to joining the district, she was a volunteer firefighter with the Glen Ellen Fire in Sonoma County, and she still is. And prior to that, she was a chauffeur at Bow Wine Tours. So she's a longtime Sonoma County resident. She attended Sonoma Valley High School and Santa Rosa Junior College. She lives in the North Bay, and in her free time, she enjoys softball, surfing, hiking, firefighting, and family. And she received the Firefighter of the Year in 2009 as a volunteer firefighter in her community. She participates in fundraisers for the fire department, and she'd like to share that she is honored to receive this recognition. Joining her is Mr. Parsigian. He joined the district as a part-time bus operator in March 26, 2015, and was promoted to a full-time bus operator on August 31st of that same year. And then he was promoted to his current position in June 18th, 2018. Prior to joining the district, he was a casino floor supervisor at the 101 Casino. Prior to that, a maintenance worker with the city of Santa Rosa. And before that, he worked as a bartender at the Flowering Tide Tub. He is a resident of Windsor since 2021 with his daughter, Gianna. And in his free time, he has lots of activities and hobbies that he enjoys, including spending time with his daughter and dog. He has been MVP of numerous rugby teams, and he won a flair bartending competition some years ago. Most significantly, he takes time and volunteers at his daughter's school. With that, it concludes my report, and I'm available to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, General Manager Mulligan. I think all of us also thank, I'm going to name them here, Messrs. Shinnet, Mendez, Gudino, Whitfield, Benjamin, Horn, Jacquez, Torres, Tupas, and Fry for saving a life. We have, in discussing the emptiness downtown, I note, as some of you who follow the news may also know, that we have some newly empty office space at 10th and Market, and maybe soon quite a bit more. I see Director Garbarino with her hand up, and then Director Parr.
Yes, thank you for your indulgence. And I just want to thank Dennis for bringing to life, really, the description of the lives of those people that work for all of us and with all of us. It makes it personal, especially as we look at this sort of craze of patchwork quilt of faces. It humanizes people and makes us remember how important it is to work on their behalf. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Garbarino. Director Parr. I think you're on mute.
Thank you for that, Patty. At one point in time, I recall having people who had done heroic things on behalf of the district to come to the board, and we handed them a certificate. Is it safe to assume that these bridge employees will get some sort of a certificate of appreciation? Even though it was part of their job, they certainly could have turned the other cheek and not looked. It's hard work to save people's lives.
They did receive letters of accommodation, and it's something that we do here at the district. Later this early afternoon, we have another get together with some folks to do a similar type of accommodation. But when Amrit talks about the AB 361 upcoming changes, I assure you we all should be looking forward to getting back together again next year and then seeing the employees in person.
Thank you, General Manager Mulligan and Director Parr. Are there any other directors with questions or comments on the General Manager's report? Madam Secretary, I'm going to lean on you for this again. I'm not seeing any. Are you seeing any that I'm missing?
I'm seeing no other hands up.
Then it is time for the next item.
All right, we're going to move on to item 6B, and that's the report of the attorney. Kim Manolis's monthly staff report can be found on page 41 of your packet, and Kim is here to present his report. Kim, go ahead.
Morning, all. Again, our report's before you. I'm happy to take any questions. No closed session today. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Manolius. Are there questions for Mr. Manolius on his report? Again, I'm seeing none. Madam Secretary, are you seeing it?
I see no hands up.
Then it's time for another item.
All right, moving on. Item 6C, and that's report of the chief engineer. That report can be found in the Building and Operating Committee meeting packet as agenda item number 5. Eva Bauer-Furbish is here to present her report. Eva, go ahead.
Thank you, Amoret. Director Torrio, members of the board, my written report is before you. And today I would like to highlight 3 projects. First, of course, is the construction of the physical suicide deterrent on the bridge. So today, Carl Stoll, the fabricator of the net, completed fabrication of about 80% of the total square footage of the net that will be installed, which is 385,000 square feet. They also continued deliveries of the fabricated net to the contractor's yard in Richmond. Meantime, the contractor is progressing with the installation of the net in the main span of the suspension bridge. And to date, about 5,000 linear feet of the net is in various stages of installation over there. Also, the contractor resumed installation of work access platforms and the net support on the east side of the south approach viaduct and the east side of the north approach viaduct. You may notice that in my report, you mentioned that there was no work in those locations when the report was issued. And I'm happy to report that this has changed since. On the 4-point arch, the contractor continues with the installation of the access work platforms, which will be used to support the net installation on that structure. And then moving on, with regards to the Toll Plaza Administration Building elevator repairs, today the contractor completed framing of the new elevator machine room. And right now, the contractor is waiting for the delivery of equipment. The old elevator piston has been removed and the new one has been installed. And we are also working on the various stages of electrical and other wiring systems. Also, after the piston is installed, the contractor will move on to completing the installation of different elements of the refurbished car of the elevator. In terms of the schedule for this project, we certainly hope that we can be done with the elevator replacement by March next year. However, I believe Amoret is working on Plan B in case the contractor incurs some delay. But we all hopeful that by in the beginning of next year, we may have the new elevator in place. And the third project is the Larkspur Ferry Terminal berth and channel maintenance dredging. And I have included 3 photographs of the dredger at the end of my report this month. This is quite an impressive large piece of equipment. And the capacity of the bucket that is used to remove the materials from the bottom of the waterway is about 55 cubic yards. And in the first photograph, which is, I think, on page 60 of the engineer's report, you may compare the size of our ferry boat to the size of the dredging platform. It's quite large. So today, the contractor has completed about 23% of the volume that has to be removed. We are working with the regulatory agency in anticipation that we may need to request an extension of time from the end of November through the end of December. The schedule has been impacted by the regulatory agency changing the disposal site in the bay. So this causes the slower progress of the disposal. So with this, I'll be happy to answer any questions the board may have for me.
I believe Director Maston has his hand up.
Yes, and Michael's mute, and it looks like he's trying to talk.
I believe so.
I'm sorry, I heard a plane flying over and muted myself and forgot to take my cap off. I was yammering away. But I will remind everybody, as I always do, that the materials, the engineer's report, Ms. Bauer-Furbush's report, is in the online materials for the Building and Operating Committee meeting. And those photographs with the impressive clamshell bucket on the dredge are there as well. So now, Director Maston, sorry, yes. Your questions.
Not a problem. Ava, you mentioned that Amaret is working on Plan B. Is Plan B a plan for where and how we would meet beginning in March if we have to go back to in-person meetings in the event that the elevator is not is not operational?
I believe
I will leave it to, yeah, I will leave it to Amaret.
Address that a little later. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be bringing that up under item 10A when we get to it.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry to cut you off, Ms. Bauer-Furbush, but I knew there was another answer waiting out there. Mr. Director Cochran.
Yes, Ava, where are they taking the spoils and the dredging?
So I believe that the original plan was somewhere in San Pablo Bay, and I don't remember what changed. Anyway, it's somewhere in the bay.
But it's not in the bay. Is it that field 60 miles offshore?
Some of it some of it was in bay disposal. The Dredge Material Management Office gave Ava and her team the ability to dispose of some in bay, which is much more economical. The rest, I believe, is going to what's known as the Culligan Ranch site, Ava, which is located in San Pablo Bay for constructive reuse to build wetlands.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there other directors with questions for Ms. Bauer-Furbush? Again, I am not seeing hands. Madam Secretary?
I see no other hands as well.
Then we can move along with the agenda.
Okay, then we're moving on to item 8 since there are no other reports under item 7. Item 8A is the report of the Transportation Committee meeting of yesterday, October 27th, and that summary of recommendations for this meeting can be found on page 45 of your packet. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary, colleagues. The action items listed under 8A were discussed pretty robustly at yesterday's Transportation Committee meeting before coming before the full board today. So Chair Arnold, please begin your Transportation Committee report.
Yes, thank you. And thanks to the directors who participated in our discussion on the 2 items for consideration. with the typo President Terry pointed out at the meeting, and as we further consider equity issues as suggested by Director Hernandez, I would like to present item 8A1, recommending the adoption of the findings of the Title VI equity analysis as attached to the staff report for assumption of the Angel Island Ferry Service and adopt the Angel Island Ferry Service and fares upon completion of the current service and fare pilots as detailed in the staff report, and I so move.
Thank you, Chair Arnold. There's a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
There is a second, and a couple of hands up as well. Are there questions or comments from board members on item 8A1? I see none. Madam Secretary, do you see any?
Thank you. Once again, voting on item 8A1 with the first and second, starting with Director Arnold,
Aye.
Director Conroy,
Aye.
Director Garbarino,
Aye.
Director Giudice,
Yes.
Director Grothball,
Yes.
Director Hernandez is absent, Director Meston,
Aye.
Director Parr,
Yes.
Director Rabbit,
Aye.
Director Rodoni,
Aye.
Director Snyder,
Aye.
Director Stephanie,
Aye.
Director Thier,
Aye.
Second Vice President Hill,
Yes.
First Vice President Cochran,
Yes.
and President Terrio.
Yes.
Thank you. You have 15 ayes.
15 ayes. The item passes. Chair Arnold, you said you had a second item.
I do. Thank you. I would like to present item 8A2, which approves updates to the agency safety plan for Golden Gate Transit in a new October 2022 version in compliance with the Federal Transit Administration's Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan Rule as detailed in the staff report, and I so move.
And
Second, Rodoni.
And there's a second right away. Madam Secretary, are there any board members that you see that have questions on this? I'm seeing none.
Yeah, I see none as well.
Okay, then we can proceed to a roll call vote.
Okay, thank you. Voting on item 8A2 with the first and second, starting with Director Arnold,
Aye.
Director Conroy,
Aye.
Director Garbarino,
Aye.
Director Giudice,
Yes.
Director Grothball,
Aye.
Director Hernandez is absent, Director Meston,
Aye.
Director Parr,
Aye.
Director Rabbit,
Aye.
Director Rodoni,
Aye.
Director Snyder,
Aye.
Director Stephanie,
Aye.
Director Thier,
Aye.
Second Vice President Hill,
Yes.
First Vice President Cochran,
Yes.
and President Terrio.
Yes,
Thank you. That's 15 again.
15, and once again, it passes. Chair Arnold, do you have anything more for us?
Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Thank you so much, Chair Arnold. Madam Secretary, on to the next item on the agenda.
Okay, moving on to item 8B is that report of the Building and Operating Committee meeting of yesterday, Thursday, October 27th. And there's a summary of recommendation for this meeting on page 47 of your packet. And I see Director Thier with her hand up. So go ahead, Director Thier.
Yes, thank you. I have a potential conflict of interest on item number 1, so I will be turning off my camera and recusing myself from the vote on this item as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director Thier.
I'm going to put her into a hold room. There we
Okay.
go.
Are we set, Madam Secretary?
We're set. Go ahead.
Okay, so just as with the Transportation Committee items, the action items under 8B1 for the Building and Operating Committee were discussed at yesterday's meeting before coming before the board for its action today. Chair Garbarino, it's your turn to start your committee's report.
Thank you, President Terrio. The Building and Operating Committee has one item to recommend today, and that is approval of item 8B1 to authorize execution of the 4th addendum to the 7th Amendment to Professional Services Agreement, PSA number 2010B1, Golden Gate Bridge Seismic and Wind Retrofit Phase 3B Design Services with HDR Engineering Incorporated of Walnut Creek. in an amount not to exceed $40,000 for continuation of engineering support services during construction of project number 1528, Golden Gate Bridge Wind Retrofit Project, for the total seventh amendment amount of $476,752, and establishes a 15% contingency for the addendum in the amount of $6,000, and as detailed in the staff report, and I so move.
And there is a motion from Chair Garbarino. Is there a second?
Second by Director Maston.
There is a second from Director Maston. Are there any questions or comments from board members on 8B1? I see none. Madam Secretary, I assume you see none.
That's correct.
All right, then a roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Voting on item 8B1, starting with Director Arnold,
Aye.
Director Conroy,
Aye.
Director Garbarino,
Aye.
Director Giudice,
Yes.
Director Grosboll,
Yes.
Director Hernandez is absent, Director Maston,
Aye.
Director Parr,
Aye.
Director Rabbit,
Aye.
Director Rodoni,
Aye.
Director Snyder,
Aye.
Director Stephanie.
Aye.
Thank you. Director Thier has recused herself. Second Vice President Hill,
Yes.
First Vice President Cochran,
Yes.
and President Tirio.
Yes.
You have 14 ayes and 1 recusal.
So 14-0, again, the item passes. Chair Garbarino, anything else?
That concludes my lengthy report.
Thank you so much, Chair Garbarino, for your good work and your brevity. Madam Secretary, the next item on the agenda, please.
Thank you. We're going to move. Make sure I'm not off on mute. Sorry about that. We're going to move on to item 8C. That's report of the Finance Auditing Committee of Thursday, October 27. And that summary of recommendation for this meeting is on page 49 of your packet. And just to let you know, Director Thier is back in the room.
I see that. Directors, the action items in 8C were also discussed yesterday at our meetings at the Finance and Auditing Committee in this case, before coming to you today. Chair Rabbit, off to the races, please.
Thank you very much, President Tirio. The Finance Auditing Committee recommends the board approve item 8C1, which amends the 2022 Master Ordinance accordingly to allow weekday hours for public parking in the employee lot from 3:30 p.m. to 9 o'clock p.m., allows weekday hours for public parking in the Toll Plaza East parking lot from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., adjust the hours for public parking on Saturdays, Sundays, and designated holidays to be 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. for designated parking lots at the Golden Gate Bridge, increases the public parking fee to an hourly rate of $5 up to a maximum consecutive parking time of 3 hours for designated parking lots at the Golden Gate Bridge, and defines designated holidays as the administrative holidays that the district observes. For the purpose of these amendments, as detailed in the staff report, I so move.
Thank you. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second right there. And are there any questions or comments this time from board members on the report? Again, I see none. Madam Secretary, if you're not seeing any, let's have a roll call vote.
Thank you. Voting on items 8C1, starting with Director Arnold,
Aye.
Director Conroy,
Aye.
Director Garbarino,
Aye.
Director Giudice,
Yes.
Director Grosboll,
Aye.
Director Hernandez is absent, Director Maston,
Aye.
Director Parr,
Aye.
Director Rabbit,
Aye.
Director Rodoni,
Aye.
Director Snyder,
Aye.
Director Stephanie,
Aye.
Director Thier,
Aye.
Second Vice President Hill,
Yes.
First Vice President Cochran,
Yes.
and President Tirio.
Yes.
Thank you. That's 15 ayes.
Back to 15 zip, and that passes. Director Thier, you have your hand up again?
Yes, thank you very much, President Terrio. On item C2, I have a potential conflict of interest. I will be recusing myself, and if you could take me away, Amaret, and bring me back, I would
Okay.
appreciate it.
I'm whisking you away. I've whisked her away.
Very good. Then Chair Rabbit, continue your report, please.
All right, thank you. I'd like to present item 8C2, which authorizes the third amendment to contract number 2018-D-096. It's the Grants Management Professional Services in the amount of $665,000 to fund additional on-call grant development and professional support services through December 2023, as detailed in the staff report, and I so move.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And there's a second. Any directors with questions or comments on this item? I see none. Madam Secretary?
I see
think
none
we
as
will
well.
call vote. Very
Okay.
good.
Starting with Director Arnold on 8C2.
Aye.
Director Conroy.
Aye.
Director Garbarino.
Aye.
Director Giudice.
Yes.
Director Grosball.
Aye.
Director Hernandez is absent. Director Maston.
Aye.
Director Parr.
Aye.
Director Rabbit.
Aye.
Director Rodoni.
Aye.
Director Snyder.
Aye.
Director Stephanie.
Aye.
Director Thier has recused herself. Second Vice President Hill.
Yes.
First Vice President Cochran.
Yes.
And President Terrio.
Yes.
You have 14 ayes and 1 recusal.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. That would be another approved item. Chair Rabbit, you have more for us, I know.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to present item 8C3, which approves a contract increase relative to contract number 2019-MD-002 for security guard services for the bus and ferry facilities in the amount of $770,411 for a contract total amount of $4,570,715 and adds an additional contingency at 5% or $228,536 for the total amount of the contract to allow for temporary and long-term increases in staffing as needed, as well as other and unanticipated circumstances, and a contractually permitted possible increase in year 4 and year 5 of the contract, as detailed in the staff report, and I so move.
Thank you, Director Rabbit, for the motion.
I'll second.
And there's a second right away. Any directors with comments or questions for Director Rabbit or report? And again, I see none. And again, Madam Secretary, if you see none, the roll call vote, please.
All right, voting on item 8C2. And hang on 1 second. I want to make sure that Director Thier is back with us. There she is. Okay. We're voting on item 8C2. I'm sorry, 8C3, starting with Director Arnold.
Should she be back with us? Oh, she is. Okay.
Yes, she
Pardon
is.
me. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Aye.
Thank you. Director Conroy.
Aye.
Director Garbarino.
Aye.
Director Giudice.
Yes.
Director Grosball.
Aye.
Director Hernandez is absent. Director Maston.
Aye.
Director Parr.
Aye.
Director Rabbit.
Aye.
Director Rodoni.
Aye.
Director Snyder.
Aye.
Director Stephanie.
Aye.
Director Thier.
Aye.
Second Vice President Hill.
Yes.
First Vice President Cochran.
Yes.
And President Terrio.
Yes.
Thank you. That's 15 ayes.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. That item passes. Chair Rabbit, you were busy, so keep going.
Thank you very much. This is the last item from the Finance Auditing Committee, and that is item 8C4. We received the updated 5 and 10-year financial projection for the period of fiscal year 23-24 through fiscal year 32-33, as outlined in the staff report and appendices of the staff report. Want to thank staff for that, and I so move.
Thank you, Director Rabbit. There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Very good. Are there questions or comments from board members on item 8C4? I don't see any. I'll just say myself again that I find this item actually pretty exciting. Madam Secretary, a roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Voting on item 8C4, starting with Director Arnold.
Aye.
Director Conroy.
Aye.
Director Garbarino.
Aye.
Director Giudice.
Yes.
Director Grosball.
Aye.
Director Hernandez is absent. Director Maston,
Aye.
Director Parr,
Aye.
Director Rabbit,
Aye.
Director Rodoni,
Aye.
Director Snyder,
Aye.
Director Stephanie,
Aye.
Director Thier,
Aye.
Second Vice President Hill,
Yes.
First Vice President Cochran,
Yes.
and President Terrio.
Yes,
Thank you. That's 15 ayes.
15 ayes. The motion passes. Chair Rabbit, are you ready to lay down your weary bones?
I am, and that concludes our report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, next item on the agenda, please.
Thank you, President Terrio. We have no addresses to the board under item 9. We're going to move on to agenda item number 10A, and that's relative to conducting these remote meetings. And I'd like to just kind of start to reiterate a little bit. I know at our GAPI meeting, Platinum Advisors did touch upon the state of emergency that's going to be ending on February 28th, 2023. And just to kind of to speak to this again, without any further changes, once the state of emergency is lifted, the district will no longer have the authority to conduct committee and board meetings remotely like we're doing now. So each month we've approved a resolution under Assembly Bill 361, so we could hold these remote meetings without meeting the access and notice requirements of the Brown Act, provided that the governor has declared a state of emergency. And either state or local officials have imposed or recommended measures to promote social distancing, or the legislative body finds that the meeting in person would present an imminent risk to health or safety of attendees. Then AB 2449 was signed into law on September 13th of this year, and that amended the Brown Act effective January 1st, 2023. But that contains a number of provisions that make the ability for our directors to participate remotely a little more difficult, and there are requirements to facilitate the public's participation. What that means for us, once the state of emergency ends on February 28th, 2023, and if there are no other changes, that includes any last minute legislation or anything like that, our meetings, committee and board meetings in March would be in person. Ideally, we would look forward to having them here again at the Toll Plaza Administration Building's boardroom where I am currently. And but as you know, and Ava has touched upon it, another factor we're continuing to monitor is the elevator replacement contract. And Otis, one of the contractors working on installation this week, there's a number of things they've been doing at night as far as evening work for the new elevator system. And from what I understand, there'll be more to come in the coming week or weeks. We're going to know a little more once the installation is complete from that end, but we're also tuned into the situation on the delivery of the actual elevator car. If there are any delays in the supply chain for the fabrication of the elevator car, the wall paneling, the floors, or anything about it, that could also add to a delay on this project. And also it'll culminate into a final inspection, state inspection of allowing us to operate the elevator. We are cautiously optimistic that we will make the March deadline, as Ava mentioned, but in the event we do not, we are revisiting a number of venues we have previously contacted to check the availability of their venues for our March meetings. And that includes the Albert J. Borough Center, Community Center, the Novato City Council Chambers, San Rafael Community Center, Mill Valley Community Center, Bay Model in South Toledo, the United Irish Cultural Center, a few local hotels along the 101 that's close, but and various rooms here in the Presidio. One of the things we're trying to keep in mind is that we want to make sure it's accessible and you can get there by transit, especially by transit. So we're cognizant of that. But also layered on top of this will be the manner in which we conduct these meetings. That will need to be discussed by the board leadership and then brought forward to the board for consideration, and how we want to proceed, especially when we've had to conduct it offsite where technology and equipment related to streaming or having a hybrid meeting may not be readily available at the venues that are going to accommodate us. So we're working through a lot of those logistics at the same time. But in the meantime, I am testing equipment here in the meeting rooms that we have at the boardroom and the committee room to make sure that we could also be able to stream these videos in these meetings. So that said, I am also again before you asking for the board's approval to adopt a resolution to allow us to continue these remote meetings, but we'll also ask it in December and January until that February 28th date. And I guess I can stop there for a second too and ask if Dennis or President Terrio have, or either of them have anything else to add.
I see General Manager Mulligan shaking his head. I will add a little bit. We, as a board, approved earlier a little knot of us to take emergency action if necessary to set up an offsite, offsite meetings, choose a site, etc. What the Secretary and I have decided to do in this instance is to pull that group back together once she has updated her homework on the potential offsite meeting areas, and to use it to come up with a proposal to bring before all of you in the event that we find that we can't get back together at the board's offices because of the elevator situation. And in the meantime, let us all pray to the God of supply chains. Are there any other questions or comments from board members on this? No. Okay. We have a suggested motion from the Secretary on this. Can I have someone make that motion?
I'll move.
There's a motion. And is there a second?
Second.
And there is a second. Any further discussion? I see none. Madam Secretary, a roll call vote again.
I was muted, sorry.
Technical
Technical difficulties. Item 10A with a first and second, starting with Director Arnold.
Aye.
Director Conroy.
Aye.
Director Garbarino.
Aye.
Director Giudice.
Yes.
Director Grosboll.
Yes.
Director Hernandez is absent. Director Maston.
Aye.
Director Parr.
Aye.
Director Rabbit.
Aye.
Director Rodoni.
Aye.
Director Snyder.
Aye.
Director Stephanie.
Aye.
Director Thier.
Aye.
Second Vice President Hill.
Yes.
First Vice President Cochran.
Yes.
And President Terrio.
Yes.
All right, thank you. That's 15 ayes.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The next item on the agenda, please.
We're going to move on to 10B, which is the discussion and possible action to terminate the suspension of board procedural rules and policies for COVID-19 related emergency actions. Mr. Mulligan's brief staff report is on page 53, and in addition, he would like to make a few statements. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Dennis.
Thanks, Madam Secretary, President Terrio, members of the board, members of the public and staff. At this time, I respectfully request that the board continue this item until next month. That is, maintain the suspension of board procedural rules and policies due to the ongoing pandemic. With the understanding that we're seeing light at the end of the tunnel and that at a future meeting, you will no longer see this agenda item. I am asking that you continue it at this time, though, because it's been quite helpful during the pandemic to navigate the various challenges that have occurred as it affects our workforce as well as our customers. This flexibility that you provided during the pandemic is what's been instrumental in allowing us to add back transit service. We use this to add back the Route 114, which is the Route 4 serving the Mill Valley area. We use this to take over Tiburon midday and a weekend service. So the delegated authority has been used very effectively in the addition of transit service where there's market forces demonstrating a need. And so I'm asking that you do continue it at this time. The two things, though, that will change this is the OSHA draft emergency temporary standards and Governor Newsom's announcement that the emergency declaration will expire on February 28th. He chose February 28th because that's after the winter surge. That may happen, and that may change his plans, but he's clearly indicated his intent to have it terminated on February 28th. So certainly we would not have this item on your March agenda. But between now and then, it does provide the flexibility that I mentioned for adding back transit service. But also as how we manage our employees' health through the pandemic, this has also been very helpful. I might mention that OSHA, their standards board, has issued a new draft emergency temporary standards that comments are due on October 31st at 5 p.m. They'll have an upcoming hearing on that. And that may affect how our employees navigate the workplace in their jobs. I might also point out, though, that as currently crafted, the draft ETS would create some disincentive for employers to bring back workers into office settings, particularly large open floor plans in downtown San Francisco. So at this time, I just wanted to make you aware of that, as well as the fact that I would like to continue this delegation a little bit longer, recognizing that it will end, but hopefully we'll be adding back more transit service in the coming months. And with that, I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you, General Manager Mulligan. Are there questions or comments for General Manager Mulligan? I see no hands. I see at least one shake of the head. All right. So then what I would ask for is a motion to continue this item to the special order of business at the next regular meeting of the board.
I'll move it.
There's various voices in there, some of which can serve as motion and some as second. Madam Secretary?
Yes, I can feel that apart.
Very good. So then can we have a roll call vote?
Thank you. We're voting on item 10B, starting with Director Arnold.
Aye.
Director Conroy?
Aye.
Director Garbarino?
Aye.
Director Giudice?
Yes.
Director Grosboll?
Yes.
Director Hernandez is absent. Director Maston?
Aye.
Director Parr?
Aye.
Director Rabbit?
Aye.
Director Rodoni?
Aye.
Director Snyder?
Aye.
Director Stephanie?
Aye.
Director Thier?
Aye.
Second Vice President Hill?
Yes.
First Vice President Cochran?
Yes.
And President Thierry.
Yes.
Thank you. That's 15 ayes.
And so the item is continued. We have no unfinished business. We have no new business to report. Item number 13 is communications. If you'd like a copy of those, please contact the district secretary's office. We saw a little list of fresh ones at the end of our package. We've reached the end of the agenda, and no further items are to be presented to the board. Thanks to everyone who joined us for the meeting
Actually,
today.
I have one last piece, and it was
you
my
do?
error. I do have item 12, and that's under new business. And Director Hill actually has a report to make for his recent attendance at the American Public Transportation Association.
Thank you so much. Director Hill.
Thank you. Yes, October 9th to 12th, it was 4 days in Seattle. It turned out to be the largest APTA conference in their history. Remarkably successful, over 3,000 people. There were 5 general sessions, 30 educational sessions, 52 committee committee meetings, and 6 area tours, which included one that I went on. I'm just going to summarize through. This is very different than anything else that I've been with APTA. It was, as I said, it was the largest, and I should mention that Artemis Davenport was there with me. We took different classes, different spaces. We compared together. It was a real thrill to have her there accompanying at the same time. The subjects we covered in classes and meetings was diversity and inclusion, the Transit Board Members Committee, Environmental Justice and Title VI Subcommittee, General Session, electric bus fleet and grid power, hydrogen fuel bus experience, which was done by AC Transit, by the way. The general session that was introduced by the FTA. They had an army of FTA people, and they had a system whereby transit companies could meet individually with FTA experts and try to pattern around wants and ask from the Department of Transportation. It was really quite an opportunity for everyone. The pros and cons of zero fares. 5 years ago, I brought that up at a TBM session. There was not much known. At this one, in a family feud fashion, they argued between how fares could be handled. It was a good start. It was standing room only. It was really exciting to see how many people were interested. Cities and the ever evolving mobility ecosystem. Then I went on a tour to the South Base charging facility where they are implementing different types of charging. The one that they had the most of was overhead, and they were able to charge up to, I think it was 24 buses at the same time. It was quite a facility. And went into power distribution and where that was going to come from. Closing general session, and then a special meeting afterward addressing equity issues on service and fair decisions made during the pandemic. And I want to take that part to mention that the pandemic revolutionized a lot of people's appreciation of public transit and the importance of equity, because so many people did not use it, and the people who needed it the most got special privileges across the nation. And it did a real reset for transit. The combination of climate and the combination of equity has radically changed public transportation. I think I can safely say from what I saw there. The one thing I wanted to make last thing I wanted to make a comment on was when I heard that the next meeting is going to be in Orlando. I want to remind us that AB 1887, which is a prohibition of state-funded travel to states with discriminatory laws, would prevent any of us from attending that. There are 23 states now that we have prohibitions on, and I don't know if California is the only state that has this prohibition, or if there are other states also. But I brought up this issue with the APTA board in their consideration of where they have these, because these are important meetings, these are important things to attend, and for them to purposely set them up in states that we cannot visit, and then for other states that do not have the laws about LGBTQ, abortion, and sexual orientation, gender identity, and women's choice women's choice relative to abortion. So with that, I would like to bring that to attention, and we should probably explore what we can do as a state in that, because these are two important meetings to miss. I think we've got to find a solution for it. And with that, I'm open to questions.
So very good. Are there questions for Director Hill? I see none.
Okay.
Thank you, Director Hill.
Thank you very much.
So that's okay. Then, Madam Secretary, we are now at the end of the agenda with no further items to present to the board. Thanks everyone for joining us for today's meeting. May I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
And is there a second?
Second.
Madam Secretary, are we adjourning in anyone's honor this morning?
We fortunately are not.
Okay, thank you for that. Then are there any objections to our adjourning? I see none. Time is 11:23 a.m. and we are done. Those of you who are on review of officers, shall we be back here at 11:30,